Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morgan, out the Motor City Mad Mouth, along with my co-host, David Levin. How you doing up in Jacksonville, Mr. Levin?
Well, we're dodging some rain here, but other than that, we're doing pretty well. We dodged the hurricane. Things are good. Much more.
And yeah. Stuart Hack?
How's everybody over there?
How do you feel after your opportunity to visit with Ron Swoboda the other night? That was a great broadcast, wasn't it, Stu?
I had a great time, but looking forward to another great broadcast tonight.
Yeah, me too. I look forward to this broadcast every week with you two. You two are about the most qualified baseball people on the planet, and I'm so delighted to have the three of us on talking baseball. With that said, okay, David, it's a common term used in baseball. So David Levin is leading off. Go ahead, David.
All right, I'm leading off. Just so everybody knows, because I'm a Marlins fan, we're in the top of the sixth. It is 6-4 Miami. It looks like they are trying to win their fifth in a row. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll go ahead and throw some questions out there. How you doing tonight, Stuart?
I'm doing great, David. I'm a Mets fan, so although going into tonight, the Mets and Marlins had won the same amount of games.
Yeah, I know.
A little bit different in the loss column.
Well, you can thank COVID for that. And an AJ playoff, well, that takes care of everything. But let's talk a little bit about the Marlins. I mean, they're, for a team that Major League Baseball seems to really dislike right now because of COVID-19 and protocol, they're playing some really good baseball. Are they a team that you could consider, I guess, for real? I'll use that term, or is this just maybe a mirage that they're riding the wave of the fact that their lineup has changed, that they're healthier, and they're probably playing with a lot of Novocaine and forgetting, what's gone on in the last week?
At this point in the year, David, if they could just do this maybe another week or two, keep up, playing good ball, they're probably a playoff team this year.
Oh, I love it. Somebody else is jumping on the bandwagon.
So, they're almost there, and it happens a lot of times when the teams play full seasons. There'll be a team that does really well for the first 70, 80 games. I mean, I was a Met fan in the 1970s. There were a couple of years that they started off really well, first 60, 70 games, and then just faltered the rest of the way. So if the Marlins can do that and just ride the momentum, and then you get in a playoff situation and anything can happen.
Right. I remember being, it was the year that the Braves went like 13-0 and jumped out of the gate. I'm going to say that was the early 80s.
1982.
Yeah.
And the manager of the Braves that year was Joe Torre.
Joe Torre, right. And we were in Jacksonville here. We get to hear the games on the radio. And I thought that was the most amazing thing. These Marlins are kind of like that team because they didn't have, the ultimate star. The pitching staff wasn't that great, but they willed themselves to win. But they have a really good manager. Do you think this is, and Scott, forgive me, I added this right before the show. I did not get to tell you, but I'm going to add this here.
That's okay.
Do you think this is going to be Don Mattingly's best managing job in Miami over the first 5 years?
It could be. I think it's really hard to judge over 6 and today the 7th game.
Right.
Ultimately, I think you have to just kind of see how the rest of the year plays out, and then when it's over, we can decide. If it was his best managing job.
Scott, what are your impressions? And like Stuart said, it's early. It's a 6-game, 6-game skill set. So, what are your overall impressions about what Mattingly has done so far?
I'll give you one word if I'm capable of doing that: genius.
Really?
Yeah, I'll tell you why.
I was impressed with what he did last night, using the bullpen in the second game to give his starters a rest. Don Mattingly has been criticized, as you guys know, for handling his pitching staff. in previous seasons that he wasn't making the right decisions in the bullpen. For some reason, for 6 games, he's pushed the right buttons for everything.
Yeah, again, he's had a good 6 games. It's still, and if you, and technically, when you think about it, it's the equivalent of the first 16 games of a regular major league season.
Right.
So, let's see how he does. I'm fairly convinced at this point he'll keep his job. I wasn't so sure before the season started. I think I had said, they could go 18-42. It doesn't appear that they'll do that. BaseballReference.com, what they do is they have percentages of playoff scenarios. So right now, the Marlins, even at 5-1, they have an 11.3% chance to make it to the postseason. Out of that, to get to the wild card, which would mean finishing in second place in the East, they'd have a 10.2%, 1.1% chance to win the division. So
I don't see them winning the division. I just see them backdooring the playoff berth somehow.
Right now, Atlanta at 59.5% would be best bet to win that division, followed by the Nationals and the Mets.
Yeah, there you go. You still have hope for your Mets,
I know. Although the Marlins, I guess the Phillies, they're given 0.7%, so they actually feel the Marlins have a better chance to win the division than the Phillies.
Right. And I'm actually looking at the same things you are looking at right now. So it is, it's surprising. I'm excited. I know that, my boy Jordan Yamamoto, who I love, by the way, best player on the team right now as far as I'm concerned. And I know that he had some struggles today, but, he was in Jacksonville last year before they called him up to the majors, and we got to talking. I was covering them for the Jumbo Shrimp. Interesting guy. Was supposed to cut my hair while I was doing a story on the fact that he was the barber of the team. That never happened. I'm still waiting for my haircut. They have some really good talent. Just like the other teams that become winners. You go through the minor leagues, the Yankees, the Mets in the past, the Houston Astros did that. The Chicago Cubs did that. The Cleveland Indians, the Atlanta Braves. This is a team that may not win this year, but they have staying power. So my question is to both of you, and I don't know who wants to jump at it first. How soon do you think it becomes a reality that the Marlins are the ones that teams in the division will be chasing?
If things stay, in other words, people stay healthy, I would say 2022, 2023 maybe.
Scott, you've been able to be on those Zoom calls, and I know that you're getting better at it each day.
Right.
You're becoming tech savvy. So I've heard that through the grapevine.
Yeah, don't hold your breath, David, but that's okay. I'm not on the Twilight Zone, but I have to admit I am getting a little bit better at it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, what is your general impression of how Mattingly has been handling this depth and prospects that are jumping off the charts?
Somewhat pleasantly surprised. And I'll say, and let me tell you why I say somewhat pleasantly surprised. You have to talk about a manager, David and Stuart, that has started this rebuilding process. And don't forget that with a win tonight, he becomes the winningest manager in Miami Marlins history. Is that right? Correct? Over Jack McKeon?
Yeah, it is.
Right. So he's seen a lot of bad baseball, worked under Jeffrey Loria. So I think the one thing Don Mattingly's happy about is, unlike a lot of guys that have to do the dirty work, at least he can see this rebuilding thing through. Let me take you guys back. I don't want to get off the subject too much, Dave, okay? But many years ago, when the Detroit Tigers were rebuilding for their 84 championship, okay, Ralph Houck endured a lot of bad baseball. Les Moss took over, and then they snapped up Sparky Anderson. But is what they did. We're talking about a sequence. I'm sure that there are other instances that we can bring up, but this is one that hits me a little bit closer. At least the thing I can feel about Don Mattingly is he's able to hopefully see everything through. He really does. Don't underestimate, the Marlins farm system. David, you're up there with the Jumbo Shrimp. You know what's coming down the pipeline on I-95, right? Yeah. You know what's there.
You would have started this year with Cabrera and Guzman, Trevor Rogers, and I forgot the fourth pitcher. They would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, and those are 4 of the top 11 prospects in the top 30. That's amazing.
Right. But he's handling it well. He really is. Again, let me give you a quote that Brandon Kinsler came up with about Don Mattingly that I really, really wrote down that I liked. And then I want to also talk about Brandon Kinsler, guys, if I can. All right, please?
Go ahead.
And that's this. Brandon Kinsler describes Don Mattingly as a gritty manager, is what he has, an old-school mentality. But the thing I love about Don Mattingly is the most even-keeled guy on the planet. Now, you want to talk about an intangible thing here about the Marlins that probably a lot of teams that have the outbreaks. Get this, coming from Brandon Kinsler. After the first day, he takes an ironing board in his hotel and uses it as a squat board. No, we're not talking about Rocky, okay, pounding meats, okay? You with me? We're talking about an ironing board used as a squat board. So this was what initially I asked by another one. So I decided to jump on afterwards with John Eric, and I said, Brandon, can you elaborate more on what you said? So then he was telling me that he was running in place for a while, and they were taking the tops off of coffee tables, doing sit-ups on the bed, and he did whatever he could to move, whether it's flip the mattress over, just to work on the abs. You know what? Here's a team that was quarantined in a hotel stuck in Philadelphia, but they're finding a way. And I'm sure you heard the stories. You're throwing baseballs at mattresses, right? In order to try to make sure that your range of motion is right. And I think this is called resourcefulness is really what it is. So I don't think I'm getting off on it.
Everybody's benefiting from right now.
Right. So to make a long story short, okay, Don Mattingly understands what he's had to do. He's had to deal with this adversity from the beginning. Let's not lose sight of the fact that they left Miami healthy, but when they went on the road, things obviously became a little bit more difficult. Now, David, when on Monday, okay, I sat there and listened to Derek Jeter. I think you've read the quotes, right, by now about Derek Jeter saying that they let their guard down and so forth. You follow me? So, and Don Mattingly did. Right, exactly. Thank you. So no matter what facet you have in life, you could never have a false sense of security at all. And Derek Jeter was determined to make sure those changes resonated. You know what I mean? And now all of a sudden, here's a team playing. It's one thing to have a 60-game season as we're scheduled, right? With a pennant race. You with me? But now you have a 60-game season with 100 times more adversity because of an outbreak. So that urgency is greater by, I think, 3 times that. Now, the thing that Kinsler said that I took, I should also mention that he said every win is worth 3. Do the math.
Right.
You tell me.
Yeah.
Right. Well, just like I said, basically they're the equivalent of 16 games in.
Right. Correct.
Right. What impresses me the most about all of this, and I know that we're kind of rehashing what happened last week, Jeter comes he comes forthright. He sticks up for his players. He sticks up for his team. You don't see that a lot these days where management is, remember, he's not talking every day. He doesn't do that. He's kind of, he picks his spots, and Scott probably knows that more by watching Zoom, that, if there's something to be said, Derek Jeter does it. He spoke about it with the labor discussions before the season started. He talked about Black Lives Matter and social injustice. He talked about the fact that this team, when they started spring training, is different and better. He picks and chooses his spots.
Right.
But when we heard him talk about defending his players, don't always believe what you say, what you hear. Don't always believe what you read. These guys weren't out partying. They just got caught up in it. And I don't know where the line is drawn, but I really appreciate the fact that a former player is sticking his neck out for the guys that he's employing and saying whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. You wouldn't see Steinbrenner do that.
Right. They weren't.
Right? You're not going to see other owners do that, so it is refreshing.
Yeah, they weren't partying. He even clarified that, Dave, during the press conference. And I think you probably mentioned they weren't. I know this was all blown out of proportion big time. It really was. So,
I have somebody off the record that I won't mention who told me that it wasn't like that.
Right.
Somebody with knowledge of it.
Okay. But you're right, David. The moral of the story is he stands up for his players, and that's really what it's all about. And believe it or not, okay, during the Jeter press conference, this was one of those moments where I actually deferred and didn't ask a question, and I didn't need to take shorthand to grab what I needed to out of that, because I think he made a whole lot of sense is what he did, and a lot of great questions, so I didn't really have to. I'm not trying to promote myself. I'm just saying I absorbed a lot of what Derek had to say. Down the road, we'll ask him, but I didn't need to on that particular night because he was hitting everything that he had. And remember one thing about that Zoom call, Dave, that was different is you had a lot more national writers involved than you normally do the local ones as well, because this was a national story as well. So go ahead, continue on, David. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of...
You're going to find that now, and I'm sure Stuart will agree, that the shorter season means that there's more national attention.
Right.
You're going to see more and more AP writers. You're going to see more people from various newspapers who are covering the Marlins, that you'll see them be involved in the scrum. I'm going to change the topic a little bit, Stuart. I'm throwing a fastball at you, okay? Okay, so here we go. Now that we know, and I'm going to change this up a little bit, Scott, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Now that the Marlins are not the only team who has had to deal with COVID, meaning the Cardinals are involved in this too, and they've had to restructure their roster and their health and travel and their schedule and everything. Does it seem to you that the Cardinals are not getting as blistered as the Marlins did last week? Because everything you read was how bad the Marlins were. And it's, 7 players from the Cardinals have COVID. We're just going to reschedule some things.
I think because the Marlins number was hot, the Marlins had 18 players, coaches, which is more than the Cardinals. It didn't, the rumors were with the Marlins that they had been out initially, which got a lot of attention. It's been said that some of the Cardinals may have gone to a casino, and that's
when rumor. I don't know if that's been confirmed or not.
And that's where they may have contracted. I mean, I don't know if it's confirmed either. Usually in anything, the first instance is going to get more attention than others. So if a third team has an outbreak next week, it may, it becomes more commonplace. And just the hope is that Major League Baseball and the individual teams are just more equipped to handle something like this happening. When it happened to the Marlins, initially I think one player, tested positive and they didn't really do anything, then a few more, and then, they probably should have shut them down a day or two earlier than they actually did before it got way worse. But hopefully they learned from that and maybe with the Cardinals they did a little bit, and maybe that's why there aren't as many cases, at least reported cases, with the Cardinals.
All right, to answer your question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
To answer your question, David, okay, no question about it. Everybody's laughed at the Marlins anyhow, but all of a sudden the Cardinals. And now tell me, if this happens to the New York Yankees, what does the Marlins look like? The Dodgers. But the Marlins, everybody likes to pick on them.
I was kind of leading that way too. What happens if it is
but the Cardinals,
the Dodgers that are, something like that.
Now, David, you're a Marlins guy forever, so I have a question for you, if I may. All right, and that's this: when they won their 2 World Championships, I don't think they won a division title. Did they win as a wild card team?
They won as a wild card.
Okay.
They really did backdoor one of them. I think it was 97. I think the first one was a backdoor. This sets up, like I said before, and I'm preaching the same thing.
Okay.
This sets up so nicely because it's an odd season that the Marlins get in the playoffs and they do something. I've got my rally cap going on here. It's ugly, but it's a rally cap. And I know. So let me ask you this, and we'll start with Scott.
Okay.
Now that we know that there are 2 teams that have experienced issues with COVID and the protocols that have changed and how they're going to, we were talking about this before in pre-prep, where teams have to ask for, they're going to stay in the hotel, they're going to stay isolated, they have to ask permission to go out, they'll let people know where they're going, all these things that are geared towards a safer environment. Does this become the permanent bubble for this season that teams will follow, and hopefully we will eradicate and lower that baseball curve, if you want to call it that, to make sure that nobody else suffers the way the 2 teams have before?
Well, it comes down to Rob Manfred. From what I read, their most recent story coming out, They drastically changed the protocol. Mask everywhere, right? Not allowed to go anywhere. And as long as they continue to not violate, I know there'll be fines in place, right? I'm sure you're reading the same material I am. They'll be fine. I think the one thing I've been consistent with is, was there really any ever easy place, that they could have had a bubble here? I've always said, and I said it to actually Rick Curdy on Monday night, Dave and Stu, that even if you would have had it in Arizona or Florida and you had everybody together, you know what? To me, it wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world because you would have been confined to just a few hotels in a particular area versus everybody having to travel by plane and all the other external factors involved. I don't think I'm getting off track, but do you know where I'm going in terms of the bubble aspect of this, Stu and Dave? Help me out.
Well, the NBA is in Florida, and they really don't have any positive cases.
Exactly.
You stole my thunder. You know that, right? You know where I was going with the next question.
We're not talking Oklahoma City.
No, we're not. We're not talking Oklahoma City. But what I was going to say was the NBA doesn't have any cases. The NHL doesn't have any. And we've talked about this. The NBA and the NHL have a perfect system. And I don't know whether it's because there are less players. They have to, they have to corral. But Major League Baseball missed it when they didn't decide that they wanted to follow one of these guys, blueprints. Major League Baseball is a copycat sport that you build. If one team's winning to the minors, another team's going to win to the minors. If you're winning with small ball, another team's going to win with small ball. Why didn't they do this with protocol? And they missed the boat drastically. There's nobody in the NBA or the NHL are getting sick, and they're in Florida. I know, anybody want something on that for me?
Yeah, there's an easy answer to that, David, and that's this. Everybody's so worried about the length of the games, how much money, that it was all about greed before you got into practicality. Yeah. And I should point out to you guys, maybe this is a little bit of self-promotion, okay? But I believe on Monday, August 17th, I'll be having Kevin Rand on the Sports Exchange with George Eichhorn and I, just so you guys know. And just so you know about Kevin Rand, I talked to Kevin today for like 10 minutes, and he's with the Tigers, and his title right now is Infection Control Prevention Coordinator. So he works on strictly COVID-19 protocols, and we're going to have a show dedicated to that with George Eichhorn and I, and about around 2 weeks' time about the subject. So I'm kind of glad we're talking about it a little bit now, because it'll be a specialized show strictly with that protocol in mind. But to go back to your point, Dave, greed. Everybody was so worried about how much money you're going to get, prorated this, prorated that. Nobody even thought about where you were playing, right? You think?
Right. Exactly.
So that overshadowed.
They were concentrating so much on, coming to an agreement, how many games, this and that. They just missed a lot of the minutiae, a lot of the small details, which really weren't that small. It's
not a small detail when it comes to the health issue. It can't be.
You ever heard of humble pie?
I'm sorry, say it again.
You ever heard of humble pie?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Good. Quote me on it, because that's exactly what happened with MLB, Dave and Stu. Humble pie. They thought about the big pie in terms of cash-wise, but not humble pie about the repercussions by not having a much better plan in place. And now, obviously, we have all these different dynamics about 7-inning doubleheaders and every rule change that you would see in any other year. But again, I don't want to get off track here. I just want to point out specific things that are relative to what we're talking about.
But look at the bright side. This is all happening the first 2 weeks of the season, and it's not happening in mid-September.
That's true.
So, if they could have gotten lucky now and not had any issues, and it would have given them a false sense of security, and then the middle of September, the proverbial poop would have hit the wall.
Yeah, and I actually predicted that I thought the season would not last past August 9th, but knowing that Rob Manfred went ahead and instituted these protocols, I don't mind admitting that I could be wrong about August 9th. But again, we're talking about the adjustments that they've had to make on the fly. So be it. I hope baseball does make it until the end. Go ahead, David. Continue on.
Okay. So, Stu, I want to throw something at you that you actually have to answer. Alex Rodriguez and J-Lo got the VIP treatment when they went ahead and took a look at the Mets the other day. J-Lo was looking pretty special. How realistic is to think that Alex Rodriguez is going to get some part of the Mets?
As long as it's not the Wilpons, it's got to be an improvement. It's just been a mess there. They played better the last few days, but you had the whole Yoenis Cespedes fiasco, which only the Mets could have made more of it than the way it turned out. I mean, making an announcement after Sunday's game started, like in the second or third inning, that said he wasn't with the ball club, he wasn't at the ballpark, they do not know where he is. So now you're thinking he's lying in a ditch somewhere. You don't know what happened. And
I thought there was something that was like foul play. It's
right.
An NCIS story,
Right, and then then there was another cryptic message that said, "Well, he's not in danger. We still don't know where he is, but we think we don't. He's not in any danger." And then it comes out, they went into his hotel room; it was empty. And then I guess they found out through his agent that he was concerned about the COVID, and he decided to leave. But there was also Brandon Nimmo, who's a young outfielder for the Mets, young guy. He's maybe a little too honest. He was asked. He said, we knew before the game. He opted out. So now, if Brandon Nimmo and at least a good portion of his teammates know, did management know also and not want to say, and maybe it was a final dig at Cespedes? Because if you recall, last year, there was a hope he was going to play last year, but then he had that bizarre accident on his ranch with a wild boar. I mean, only the Mets and Cespedes. And with that, they docked his pay. He didn't file a grievance, which led people to believe he was guilty, but he couldn't have been happy about it.
I think he was forced into that, don't you?
He was. Yeah. I guess the Mets had probably enough evidence that said, you have no case. If you do a grievance, you'll lose. And maybe he was advised, I guess I probably will. Now, it would have been very easy for him to opt out before the season started, but he did get a bonus, I think a couple of $1 million for being on the opening day roster.
Right. There was part of his contract.
So now,
he was on the opening day. Yeah.
And people said, will say that, he was concerned. There was still some incentives for numbers and the Mets were starting to sit him a little bit, and he wasn't supposed to play Sunday anyway. And he may have been concerned that he wasn't going to reach his numbers, and and he's a free agent after this year. And, you could say the Mets signed him, he came to the Mets in 2015 in August, led them to a World Series, had a pretty good 2016. They made it to the wild card game. And then after that, he was a bust. So it's almost, someone had described it on radio up in New York where it's almost like you try and marry your one night stand. And the Mets tried to do that, and it just ended so badly. So is it the Wilpons' fault? Who knows? So any ownership coming in, I have no problem with, because it can't be any worse. A-Rod, say what you want. He has a good baseball mind. So, I wouldn't expect him to give, advice on supplements, because that might not be his forte. But, as far as on the field, he's going to be an improvement. And, as long as whoever comes in spends a little money, because the Wilpons, and maybe it was a Bernie Madoff thing, they just weren't going to spend money. And they just got to go.
To add to that, then, real quick, does he have the same kind? If he is part of this ownership group that does get the team, does he have the same kind of, influence on the roster that Mattingly does? Because I'm sorry, not Mattingly, Jeter. Because you see Jeter at the field, and you see Jeter talking to the players, and Jeter's talking to Michael Hill, and then he's talking to, Louis Brinson, who is on his last leg as far as, his career in Miami. Do you think he's going to be that kind of owner where he's hands-on and does the things that, I'm going to use the term again, the Yankees way?
Well, let me ask you, can you imagine Alex Rodriguez just sitting behind the scenes and doing nothing. He wants to be visible. He wants to be recognized.
I'm hoping not. That was my point. I'm hoping not. So,
you know, he's doing this because he wants to be in the spotlight. You know, he's trying to get, you know, backers money wise. You know, the only thing that, you know, I hope if it comes through that his relationship with J-Lo holds up, because that's going to be really awkward. You have like a Los Angeles Dodgers situation with the breakup. And this will be a lot worse because, you know, these are high profile, more so than, you know, McCoy.
McCoy, thank you. I couldn't think of the name was.
Yeah, the only reason I remember is the same name as my high school English teacher who wrote Angela's Ash.
There you go. Well, hey, that's a good reason to know. Ironically, Alex Rodriguez's cousin, Joe Denon, is the second baseman here in Jacksonville for the Jumbo Shrimp. He's amongst the top 40 prospects in the minor league system for the Marlins. And every time he is interviewed, the first thing he's asked, when is the wedding? I kid you not. This kid cannot get out of his cousin's spotlight. It's depressing for him to watch him literally happen.
Didn't A-Rod have another cousin who was supplying him with the steroids?
Yes. Well, I don't know if that's true, but that's been discussed.
But those Thanksgiving dinners got to be really interesting there.
That probably is something to be a fly on the wall for sure. Don't you think so?
You know what? No comment.
Okay, let's get back to baseball.
Well,
but A-Rod's going to be have an act. If they buy the team, he's part of that ownership. He's going to have an active role.
The only thing I'll say about A-Rod, okay, you want to know what I think of Alex Rodriguez? Okay, here's what he knows: the Seattle Mariners way, the Texas Rangers way, the New York Yankees way, a little. Now, if you want me to make a valid Alex Rodriguez comparison, I'll go ahead and pick on my favorite quarterback of all time, Dan Marino. Tell me this guy's going to sit there and work his tail off and like Dan Marino, who's a figurehead, and then put in the work, okay? Don't hold your breath, guys. And then if you want me to take it a step further, okay, what about John Elway? John Elway's willing to get his hands dirty like Derek Jeter. But I agree with Stuart on this one. I really, really do. He's a figurehead that likes the spotlight. Derek Jeter's a blue-collar guy, knows how things were done, came up through the Yankee system, and as a result, his numbers speak for themselves. Bear in mind, Alex Rodriguez would be ringless, okay, without Derek Jeter. Okay, right? Would you agree?
Well,
do you think that he could have won a ring by himself? I don't think so. How many times did Alex Rodriguez get in the postseason and lay an egg? You tell me. Okay. I'm just, you're asking me a question about Alex Rodriguez, and I believe in my mind that Derek Jeter, okay, to me is unbelievable. I really, I've never met the guy, but obviously, when I saw the Zoom and everything that he stands for with the Yankees, to me, all he's trying to do is duplicate New York, what he's doing duplicate Miami, what he did in New York. And I believe he'll do it. It was tough at the beginning, unloading a lot of good players. I get that. Okay. But give the man time. And I believe Derek Jeter will get it done. And I know David's probably smiling, doing cartwheels all the way out in Jacksonville somewhere. I'm just saying.
I'm not doing cartwheels because I have no balance. But I'll tell you this: last year, Derek Jeter was in Jacksonville. He goes to the different minor league teams and he does the assessment and he walks through and whatnot. I didn't get to meet him, but I got to watch what he was doing. And he's walking around the concourse of the baseball field. Mm-hmm. He's asking questions. And he's looking around, and he stops and he looks, and you can tell his mind is moving. So he's making, mental notes. Well, this works, this works, this works. Walks on the field, talking to the manager, Randy Reddy, and then he's talking to Harold Craw, who's the general manager in the front office. He's a hands-on guy, but he's not just the players. He's hands-on with everything else. He's taking, mental notes, which he then goes back and says, this guy is somebody we move. This is a guy we keep going. This is what we need to do to improve the ballpark. It's the entire package. It's not just the guy at the plate, so to speak. That's why this team is going to be so successful, down the line. I really believe that in 3 or 4 years, Miami's going to have a World Series title, and it will be because of what Jeter has done to build this team. With that said, Stuart, the blueprint the Marlins put together this year, and granted, it's not the same one from 2 weeks ago because they had to rebuild their roster. Is this the kind of blueprint that owners are now going to use when they have to rebuild a team? Because every team has to rebuild at some point. So are the Marlins breaking new ground here?
I think for smaller markets, yes. But, for the Mets, I think the new ownership and the new management team are going to spend money, and they're going to go after established free agents. They're not necessarily going to start. And also it becomes a little tougher now because the minor league system has taken a hit this year. And it's one they may never recover from. So it's going to become very difficult to build a minor league system when maybe you have one or two minor league teams. So the Marlins may have been maybe the last team to get in under this blueprint. It's going to become very hard for other teams to do it the same way. And I guarantee you the Mets aren't going to do it that way.
No, but I also believe that next year, when a TV contract is settled for the Marlins, they are going to go out and spend some money. He came in and they were bleeding. Jeffrey Luria didn't do anything to help stabilize the financial package. And he knew when he was getting out what was happening with television revenue and problems with the stadium, naming rights and things like that. So I do believe that they will spend a little money next year. They're going to go get somebody. Somebody's going to want to come to Miami because it's the place to be.
Hey, by the way, Stuart, you'll be really proud of me on a broadcast last night. I used the word jock tax, just so you know.
Okay.
When it came to retired athletes, I did. I somehow, some way, when it came to retired athletes, David will get around to it because I made sure that I shared it with him on Twitter. He'd be proud of me that I retained the word jock tax. Didn't mean to interrupt you guys, but that was one of my jock tax moments.
Okay, so I'm going to throw this one out. We'll go with Scott first. Okay?
All right.
Is this going to be the season where the Yankees run away with it again, get another World Series title, praise themselves for being, the best baseball team in the major leagues, and it only being a 60-game season and being tainted?
No question about it. But the only thing is, they'll have World Series number 28 under their belt, so nobody will care. It'll be 28. So asterisk or not, they have 28 of them, so it doesn't matter where they're at. But yeah, I think they'll run away with it. They've certainly shown pretty well that they're a very powerful team, and having Giancarlo stand there and Judge swinging the baseball, and don't sleep on DJ LeMahieu either. And ever heard of that guy named Garrett Cole? You get the drill?
Right. What do you think, Stuart?
I mean, you could write the Yankees ticket to the postseason that they're in.
Right.
Once you get into smaller series, then anything can happen. I don't think there's any guarantee. I think for this year to be considered more legitimate, you do need a team like the Yankees to make it to the World Series. Mm-hmm. Because if you get a team like the Orioles or, just get on a hot streak, or even, I hate to say it, the Marlins, people will question the authenticity of this season. So I think Major League Baseball would be thrilled if they had a Dodger-Yankee World Series this year in a 60-game season.
If everybody remembers, I said the Dodgers and Yankees when we started this, that I thought that they would be the World Series teams. I'm going to stick with that.
I thought you got a Harvard degree to figure that one out, David. My goodness.
Well, I went to Florida State. My father still doesn't like it, but hey, it served me well.
Well, if you're going to plug your alma mater, I'll say
my daughter is a Florida State grad.
Hey, you know what? If you're going to plug, Dave, you're going to plug your alma mater. I'll do at USF, which is FSU backwards, University of South Florida.
That's right.
So
Now, what's funny is my son is a student at USF, and my daughter is a graduate of SSU.
Yeah. So David Levin should have.
But I'm an Albany, New York State Great Dane.
I was going to say that state tuition is state tuition, right? So that's pretty good for you.
Yep, I do have that.
Then we can get David on national radio to agree, right, David, that me going to the University of South Florida Bulls is the appropriate nickname for my personality, right? That I was really definitely fitting in out there, right, Dave? Beautiful thing.
I wasn't going to comment on that, but you kind of opened that door.
Oh, I'm not. I'm having some fun. Hey, listen, I never picked the name of the school. I did pick the school. It was a great school. It really is. No, I'm really.
It's funny. I started out at Jacksonville University.
Did you?
Living in town, and thinking it's a fine liberal arts school.
Oh yeah.
My father and grandmother went there before me, so I wanted to stay home. And it's 2,500 students. It's on the St. Johns River. It's beautiful, whatever. And then I meet a girl, and I have to transfer. Florida State was the best 3.5 years I don't remember, but I came away with a degree, so my parents are happy. Last question, and I don't know. I'm going to just ask the question. Stuart, you take it first, and then Scott, you do with it what you want to do with it.
Okay.
Because of the problems with COVID, they've had to reschedule. There's been different scheduling for the Phillies, the Yankees, the Marlins, the Cardinals. I think the Washington Nationals were involved in that too. The Baltimore Orioles. But the bottom line is they've had to constantly reschedule. We're having double headers to make up games. We're making new travel accommodations and whatnot. This has got to be the most bizarre season we've ever had. That said, how important are these awards at the end of the season? How important is it for an MVP? How important is it for a Cy Young? It almost means it's almost anticlimactic, like it really doesn't matter. So, guys, have at it.
I'm either way. I mean, Major League Baseball could say we're not going to have awards. It's interesting. The NBA has said their awards are going to be based on pre-March 13th numbers. Mm-hmm. Right. So anything that's happening now in the bubble, they're totally ignoring for awards. A guy wins an MVP, he's going to say I'm an MVP award winner. In his mind, 30, 40 years from now, a lot of people aren't going to remember, how it was a 60-game season or, living through it. As time goes on, your name is listed on the list of MVP winners, the list of Cy Young Award winners. To the people who win it, to the fans of the individual that wins it, it's still something. Like as a Met fan, I've never seen a Met win an MVP award. The closest was 1988, where basically Strawberry and McReynolds split the vote and Kirk Gibson got in. Right. So I've seen some Cy Youngs, but I've never seen a Met win an MVP. So if by some chance, I'm trying to think of the same, if the world really turned around and the Met did win an MVP this year, I take it as a fan.
Okay.
It makes sense. I still think there should be an asterisk by it. I can't. Individual awards, home run hitters, RBIs, ERA, whatever. It's not 162 games. I mean, even if it was even 154, it'd be different. But it's hard for me to sit there and say, yeah, he's a real home run champion when he's only hit 13 home runs in 60 games. He's named the home run champion. It's just, to me, that's completely bizarre.
All right.
What do you think, Scott?
You know what? I'm going to take a little softer approach on some things. There is one thing I want to mention about Derek Jeter, if I can, first. But make sure I get back to this, David, because I have some interesting ideas. The one thing that we've all learned in life, and being a journalist like you are, Dave, the 5 W's and 1 H, right? Whether it's sales, whether it's writing or whatever. He utilized that 5 W's.
By the way, that 1 H is hell, not hell.
Well, no comment. You did get one of those out of me, by the way. But what he did, or 2, I don't know, whatever. But still, when he's assessing the organization by using the 5 W's and 1 H in terms of how he's going to build the Marlins, the one thing I can feel good about what the Marlins will do is, unlike the 2 previous championships where they've sold everybody away, at least I think they'll have continuity this time compared to prior. So when he's evaluating it, shadowing, whatever the case is, then I do believe at some point a stadium, which is still located in arguably one of the worst places you can put it, and I think it should have been further north. Stuart and I would certainly agree because we're further north, right? Still, they'll put 30,000 people in there anyways if they're winning. Now,
hang on one second.
Sure.
How much distance is between the two of you? As far as living?
40 minutes
drive.
Huh?
Okay, so it's, in other words, to get to a stadium to watch football or baseball, it's not a hellacious drive for you guys to go.
Well, my dream situation is the Florida Panthers are 20 minutes away at PB&T. Gotta love it. So, and the Dolphins are only about 30 minutes away, right on the turnpike. So that's not a big deal. So I just wanted to make sure we address the 5 Ws and 1 H in terms of how Derek Jeter ran it, in terms of why I think the Marlins will be relevant and good for a long time. Now, to go back to your question, Dave, about the awards, I'm okay.
Right.
In the 1994 season, when they lost the World Series, didn't they hand out awards then?
They did.
They did. So let's go back to 1994. They gave away the awards. You didn't have a World Series champion. So I'll be a little bit more of a softie on the awards. The only problem, and I won't even give an asterisk, the only time an asterisk would come into play here is if you have a 400 hitter. That's it. 400 hitter,
Right.
lesser games. But in terms of an award, listen, if you're going to give them away for the 94 strike, then who's going to care? Because like Stuart just said, right? Okay. That, the awards are going to be looked upon as history, okay, being whatever they are. But in the end, you're only worried about the World Series champion. And if the baseball gods have anything to say with it, the Yankees will get it and they'll have number 28. Nobody will frankly care anyways. And for those superstitious people out there want to know, in 1981, the Dodgers won it. Then the Dodgers will be associated with unprecedented crazy times to win theirs too. So you can't go wrong with either prediction, but I'm going to go back to the Yankees. And I wanted to make sure that you guys know that I didn't get off subject. I just want to illustrate a few points to answer your question, David. Okay.
Now, you want to hear an interesting thing about the 1994 awards?
Sure.
So Frank Thomas was the AL MVP. The National League MVP was Jeff Bagwell. Now, the interesting thing with that was about 3 or 4 days before they ceased playing, Bagwell fractured his wrist and was out for the season.
That's right.
I remember
That's
that.
Right.
It turns out he only missed a couple of games, but had they finished that season, he would have missed the last 6-7 weeks and he wouldn't have won the MVP.
Good point.
No.
Yeah.
David Cohn, by the way, won the Cy Young for the AL last year.
Did he?
While he was pitching for the Royals.
Right.
That's revisionist history right there. And of course, Greg Maddux took the Cy Young Award that year for when he was pitching for the Braves. I remember that injury too because then there was controversy about it. But then they actually did discuss that. Was he, do you deserve it because he wouldn't have wanted given the regular season? That's pretty cool stuff. That's a walk down memory lane, people.
Yeah.
All right, Scott.
Yeah.
You got stuff to talk about?
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Let's talk about Andrew McCutchen. Poor baby was upset with the Miami Marlins because we did everything right and we paid for it. Welcome to 2020, Andrew. I don't know, David, does that one classify as a rant, or are we going to all collectively say, poor baby,
it might.
Andrew? I don't know. You tell me.
I know.
What's your thoughts, Dave?
Probably.
Yeah.
So I'll talk a little bit about he's been in the news quite a bit this week, opening his mouth.
Right. Sorry, I don't have any sympathy for you, Andrew. Big deal.
No. What else you got?
Shohei Ohtani can't throw for 4 to 6 weeks due to a forearm injury. Can he continue to be a two-way player? You know what? I'm going to defer to Stuart, David, and then I'll go ahead and take over there.
No, go ahead.
I think he's not pitching anymore this season. I think Ohtani wants to be a two-way player. The Angels at some point are going to have to make a decision. Is he more effective to be an everyday designated hitter? And they may give him one more chance next year to see what he can do if he's ready in spring training. But if his arm breaks down again, or then he's not equipped to be a major league pitcher unless they want to. Then it becomes a catch-22. People like that generally do better as closers. But then if he's a closer, he can't be an everyday player because he may be needed in the bullpen.
Right.
So I think at some point they're going to have to make some sort of decision, and it's probably going to have to be by next year as to whether he could be a two-way player.
Go ahead, Dave.
I made a comment last year when they were talking about this. I said at some point he's going to get injured, and that's going to make a decision for him. Here's the decision for him. I agree that if he's a pitcher, he's a closer because he pitch more games, but it's not as much stress on the arm.
Right.
I don't believe that a two-way hitter today, based on how the player is developed, works. And at some point, they're going to make a decision for him, but they're not going to let him make that decision.
Do you know how many years he signed for?
Actually, no, I don't, but I can look it up.
Yeah. Because it'd be interesting, if he has his heart set, or what the Angels do when he's eligible to be a free agent.
Yeah. Hang on 1 second for me.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm checking too. I know he came up in 18.
Yeah, I kicked myself out of Baseball Reference. I could have just done it right there.
Well, while you guys are checking, just to give you an updated score.
So he becomes arbitration eligible next year.
Next year, yeah.
And the earliest he could become a free agent is 2024.
Okay. All right. Just an updated score here. Miami Marlins 8, Baltimore Orioles 6. We're in the bottom of the 7th one out. Okay.
Thank you.
From Camden Yards. I didn't realize that Marlins Park was located in Camden Yards. Senility 101 has struck me. Go ahead.
So I know you're probably wondering, what the magic number is.
Sure.
Sure.
So to win the division, let's assume the Marlins win tonight. I don't know are the Braves playing?
Yeah, let me
hang on.
Let me look that
You're
up
making
here.
us work here. You know that. You're making us work.
I know.
That's all right. Braves 4, Toronto Blue Jays 3.
Okay, so let's assume the Braves win. So then, let's see.
It's final.
So then the magic number would be 50. So any combination of 50 Marlin wins or 50 Atlanta losses would give the Marlins the division, assuming they play a 60-game schedule, both teams.
Oh, they'll get caught up, just get buried in double headers.
Of course. Right now, of course. Gotcha.
Let me add a little insight about Ohtani that I think that we can't lose sight of. Remember, he came from Japan, and those Japanese pitchers get worked pretty hard. And I wonder about their durability as well. We've talked about Tanaka. And who was the guy that threw that, the Boston Red Sox guy? I'm trying to remember. Help me out a little bit there.
You got me on that one.
No, I don't know. But all I can tell you is they get that they go ahead and they get worked pretty hard. So by the time they get to the major leagues, you got to wonder about the sustainability of Japanese pitchers here in the United States, unlike position players.
Oh, shoot. I can see his face, too.
It's not I know Hideo Nomo may have pitched a little bit for the Red Sox, but
it wasn't Hideo Nomo. I know that much.
Nomo did pitch for the Red Sox, I believe.
Yeah, but that's not the one that I'm referring to.
Is it recent?
Yeah, it was actually. It was.
It was like a relief pitcher, wasn't it?
No, I thought he was a starter, if I remember right. Japanese pitchers. I'm sure it'll come to us by the end of the broadcast. I'm sure it will. But, he had one of those funky pitches, I think it was, that threw people off.
Okay, you know what? I see a guy that looks like he's got a screwball windup, and I can't think of his name.
I know. Yeah, that's what I'm telling you about. No, I don't know. Oh, well, whatever. Sorry I threw a curveball at you that we're all swinging and miss. I thought a lot of the Japanese players look alike anyways.
It's a screw.
Oh, you know what? I wonder if it's Suzuki. Is it Suzuki?
It might be.
Yeah, I think that's who it is. Yeah.
It might be.
Yeah.
But I can't. Don't hold me to that.
Well, there's Toyotas and Suzukis out in Japan, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Again, bear in mind, I don't want to. It's not about the name game here, in as much as the fact that the Japanese style of baseball, you work pitchers pretty hard, so by the time they get to the major leagues, you have to really wonder what they've got left. You know what I mean? And I think that's the moral of the point. But nevertheless, I personally...
Are you thinking Daisuke Matsuzaka?
That's it.
Matsuzaka.
That's it. I knew somebody was going to get it here tonight.
He actually was with the Mets a little bit.
Was he? Okay, that's it.
You're right. Matsuzaka.
Good job, Mr. Hack. You attacked that one. All right, good job.
That windup was sick.
Wasn't it? Well, that's why he didn't last long. But to answer your question, I don't think he'll last as a two-way player. I think his best shot is a closer, but I think ultimately the Angels experiment to give him 2 or 3 years. And if his arm's not holding up, you better just take what you can get out of him being an everyday player. That's the moral of what I had to say about it. Let's go on to a few other points of interest.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's go a few other points of interest. The Field of Dreams game between the Cardinals and the White Sox were canceled. Prior to that, you had the Yankees and the Chi Sox. St. Louis was selected in July. That game will get made up next year anyway. So, but you hate to see it, but, how many fans you would have had there, but at least I'll have a little time to get that site straightened out. Any thoughts about the Field of Dreams game, like everything else in 2020 that went down south?
I think I'm more upset I'm not there.
I'm sorry, David, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I think I'm more upset that I'm not there because that's a game that, it's a bucket list thing. But it's 2020. What else are you going to expect, honestly?
Well, 2021.
It would be more newsworthy if they announced they were going to play it.
Right. 2021, David, there's your bucket list. Okay. No big deal.
Okay.
So who do you want to be the next commissioner in Major League Baseball? I'll give you one.
Go ahead.
Trevor Bauer. At least that's what he thinks. He thinks he can do a lot better. He thinks he can do a lot better than Rob Manfred. All the guy did was go ahead and have a press conference shirt that said that Bauer for commissioner, and he pitched a 7-inning gem against the Tigers 4-0. But his playbook on Twitter said, "Take no risk yourself, blame everything on the players. Okay, protect TV revenue at all costs, and then repeat." I guess he's making a case for commissioner. Would you guys vote him in?
I think it falls right in line with how crazy 2020 has been. Nothing surprises me.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, I can't see how the owners would approve him.
I don't know either.
Especially in Cleveland.
No,
exactly. Oh, yeah. Well, you don't want to get into the Cleveland Cincinnati jokes. If you want to do that, since David's a football guy, talk about Sam Weiss. He wasn't too complimentary for Cleveland, but that's for a football broadcast at some point down the road.
That is one of the all-time great soundbites.
Wasn't it? Oh, yeah, it was. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Marlins a little bit. I know, David, you danced around a little bit, but, let's go back there and backtrack to Monday a little bit. That the Marlins were finally official to clear to play. But I think the key words that I try to take out of the whole thing was the emblems of a fragile season. That's what it is, but when that was released. But now you wonder about the fragility of the season as we move things forward here to tonight. How fragile is this thing, knowing that they've piled up a few wins quietly?
It's not fragile.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. Hang on, let me adjust my volume here.
Sure.
Can you guys hear me a little better? I'm sorry, I'm having a sound issue.
Right.
It's not fragile, I'll tell you why. The way that the original team was constructed before COVID was that he was going to rely on his veterans to pull him through and then bring the minor leaguers up if needed. That's why that it was a little shocking that somebody like Monty Harrison or Yamamoto, for that matter, were left off the original 30-man roster. Then you get COVID, and then you have to regroup. And you have players who are still in Jupiter who are healthy and are able to contribute because they know they could bring along. And then they filled it in with spot veterans who, were, check players, I'll call them that, where they're gap players. He played this perfectly. This is small ball at its finest. And for some reason, it's working for Mattingly now. So I think this is a real deal. And regardless of what his roster is going to be, and remember, his first three starters are all on the IL right now as far as his first three starting pitchers. When they come back, that pitching staff is going to be sick.
Yeah,
this is a team built for the long run and the short term.
Well, don't forget about what they have up in Jupiter, David. I mean, they drafted a lot of pitchers this year, too, right? I mean, Max Myers.
They did, but those guys aren't. Max Myers not going to see the major leagues this year.
No, but the point is,
they're roster, but they did the right thing.
My point is, they're stockpiling arms, is what they're doing, whether this year or not. They're still stockpiling arms. That's my point. So here, you want to talk about a team that goes from. You talk about bad luck. They lose 13 players to the injured list prior to the return for the Orioles, and among some of the notable players, Sandy Alcantara and Miguel Rojas. And, when we were texting earlier in the week to wonder if he's going to play, well, no, the guy's down here taking a bus ride recovering in Miami, and they don't know when he's going to play. It's just a matter of getting healthy. Right. But yet, meanwhile, they're piling up wins without this guy, and they're learning more and more and more about their players. So, and then get this, 8 of the 12 relievers that they ended up were on their opening day roster. And now when you talk about a piecemeal job, Don Mattingly didn't even know a lot of these players, and he's compiling information here with analytics and all that stuff on top of what we're doing.
Didn't he was quoted as saying we have guys on here, we don't know what they're going to do, so we're getting our first look or something like that. He
Correct.
said that
Yeah.
in the post game.
Yeah.
Right. That he didn't know what he had, and he was hoping it would all just fit together. Well, guess what? The puzzle pieces are fitting. I'm sure, Stuart can definitely agree with the fact that this is probably the best mismatch roster that you'll see in quite a while. That's just proving that if you go out and play baseball and just play the game, it really doesn't matter what you're doing.
As I said, if they could just keep some sort of momentum the next couple of weeks, that it's going to steamroll, the domino effect, and they'll make the playoffs. And once you're in these short series, anything can happen.
I know that you will like this, Scott. I said this in a story that I read for Fansided. I'm going to go ahead and give myself a plug.
Okay.
This has all the makings of Major League. All these guys are coming together, and they just got to win the whole damn thing.
Okay.
It has that Hollywood feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all you need is for the Wilpons to own the team and try and stop them, and they win despite. And then it would be the true Major League movie.
Kidding. No, yeah, you're right.
Well,
you like that.
I can't remember the last time I went on a broadcast and said the word no comment, but now I can put down August 6th, 2020. All right. So, anyways, let's talk about the fact that Major League Baseball is going to use 28-man rosters for the rest of the season in the playoffs. So once we comment on that, David and Stu, I want to go over a few comments that Don Mattingly made on the Zoom call before we wrap up the broadcast and let everybody talk about what they're doing. All right. Let's talk about it's 28 enough. David, you lead off this time.
Okay, sorry, you broke up for me. Can you say that last part?
Absolutely. I'll say the whole thing. MLB is going to use 28-man rosters for the rest of the season and playoffs. Is that enough?
Yeah, 2 less players. I'm going to say yes. We would be at 25 or 26 if we were playing 162 games. So basically, we're gaining 2, but we're technically taking away 2. I'm going to say yes, it's going to be enough, but I also think there's going to be some player change for all of these teams in another week or two. There's going to be a settling in period. Stuart said this is like 16 games we've already played. Once everybody is equal, and I don't know when that becomes equal because of players and COVID and whatnot, 28 will be enough, and then you'll separate the haves with the have-nots.
Okay. Stu, what's your take on that?
I think it's possible that you see them expand. If there's some more cases of this, they've been changing the rules mid-season from the get-go. So who's to say that, there are a couple of cases next week and they're saying, well, we need more players available. So let's, make it 30, 35-man rosters or go to 40 just the rest of the year, because no rule is set in stone for the rest of the year. Obviously, they've shown they'll change the moment notice. The 7-inning doubleheaders, that wasn't even a discussion when the season started, and now all of a sudden, as of August 1st, any doubleheader is 7 innings.
Isn't it brilliant?
The only thing else, a reference to this whole thing is I think 28's enough, but MLB is starting to remind me of NASCAR. NASCAR used to like to change the rules in midstream, so I guess for 2020, if they're going to go ahead and change them in midstream, so be it. Now, Stuart and I, when we talked to Ron Swoboda, Stuart, I want you to paraphrase what Ron Swoboda had to say about your buddy Yoenis Cespedes. I can guarantee that Ron Swoboda won't be sending Yoenis Cespedes any Christmas cards, will he, Stuart Hack?
He just kind of said he was a bad dude. Even before he came to the Mets, Ron Swoboda was friendly with a Red Sox coach at the time Cespedes was playing there, and just the consensus was that he was a bad dude.
That was a winner.
And you just look at all the teams he played for. He never lasted anywhere. He would wear out his welcome. The big question, I think, with Yoenis is spring training 2021. Does anybody sign him even to a minor league deal?
The Yankees. it sets up nicely.
I don't think he'd be a fit anyway. Even if he was a good guy. They have Stanton and
true. Well,
Judge.
For a while, you'd think Miami because of the Latin connection, but I'm not so convinced after his last act for sure. But I would say no.
Let's say this: since the Marlins did not sign Yasiel Puig.
Yeah.
There were plenty of opportunities. I know they offered him a contract. If they weren't going to sign Puig, they won't sign him.
Right. Well,
that's for sure.
Well, the thing is, the Marlins have a lot of good things going for them. Why would you want to have a guy like Yoenis Cespedes? I don't want to sit here and pin the Antonio Brown toxic thing on there, but if I decide to do it, then I think you guys can certainly be intellectually enough to relate that it may not be that far-fetched, is it? You don't want a toxic individual disrupting something that's very good. Now, what I want to do here is I want to go over some quotes that Don Mattingly had, and then you guys can size up each and every one of them. Because the one thing I've learned over the course of the last few weeks since I've been on these calls, okay, so the guy has an incredible sense of humor, but just a very dry sense of humor. Yeah. So, for example, he's not going to tell you right now what his starters are because that's a TBD, so we'll leave that alone, okay? But here's what he thought about Eddie Alvarez, okay? That he compares him to Bo Jackson, okay, type that Bo knows. You know, his ability to play to professions, the Olympics as well as baseball. So a Bo Jackson analogy. Now, go ahead, David.
First of all, I'm getting familiar with this story. I'm probably late to the game on that because,
okay.
But I will tell you this: when they signed him and they brought him over and he became part of the organization, one of the baseball writers that I know where I work with said, "This guy is scrappy and he's better than people think he is."
Right.
And that's kind of mentality that the Marlins had hoped he would be, and evidently he fits perfect with what they're doing right now.
Well, but the Bo Jackson analogy, I just want to make sure I emphasize the Bo Jackson analogy coming from Don Mattingly. That's strong company when you put a Bo Jackson into this guy. Yes. That's all it is. Now, in terms of time, Jack McKeon, he when asked about the record situation, okay, you know what? I've been here a while, and obviously the ownership, he's thankful that Jeter's allowing him to stay, but, hopefully he says he's seen the worst of what's going on. Now, here's a little thing that you guys should be aware of, that they'll be playing the first team to play in Buffalo, and he says he's never been there in his life, and that the only thing he knew about it was the natural with playing at War Memorial Stadium and the Bills, and the only time that he ever was in that area was in the New York Penn League, back probably when I was covering minor league baseball, and he's been to Niagara Falls. So, so when you talk about the sense of humor, Buffalo will be seeing Major League Baseball probably pretty soon.
Yeah.
In fact, Barry Bloom is the one who asked him that question. Everybody knows that Barry Bloom is a pretty credible writer. Barry goes ahead and asks him about Niagara Falls. Oh, yeah, I've seen both sides of them. But the one thing that can't be lost sight with Don Mattingly, and I think all of us have alluded to it during the course of this broadcast, is this, okay? He has done a masterful job handling this team. You want to talk about a guy who is proud of the way his team is playing under the adversity, and he's always consistent with his personality, and he has continuity in his dugout. He's the ultimate poker face, and when you have a guy like Brandon Kinsler saying it's a gritty team, Mattingly said, you know what, you just have to be mentally ready, and you have to make sure that no matter how bad things are get, just stay even-keeled. And I don't know what happened to him with the Dodgers, but I'll tell you what, Derek Jeter should be very thankful that Don Mattingly, I hope, sees this thing through, because he'll be the first to tell you right now that any good manager defers to their players. You talk about Jim Leyland, same thing. You guys know, you guys are baseball people. They defer to their players. They take it away from them. And that's exactly what he says. He says his team loves to play. We have the right guys. They compete. They play hard. And getting through this adversity the way it has, they brought the team together. So I just wanted to make sure that I put everything in perspective about Don Mattingly's press conference. And I'm going to keep quiet for a moment and defer to both of you guys and try to absorb what I just said before we close things out.
Go ahead, sir.
He's done a good job. He's the right guy right at this point for a young team. Let's see how the season plays out before, we knight him the next John McGraw. Kind of a wait and see. It's 6-7 games. It started as well as they can be expected, but let's see what happens when they get into playing the double headers. And even into next year, when hopefully there's a 162 game schedule and he has a chance, where these young players have a year under their belt to develop them. Let's wait and see before we knight him the second coming.
Okay, two things real quick. First of all, when he started the game tonight, his career record was 727 and 734. That tells you how really good the Dodgers teams were that he managed, and how really awful the Marlins teams that he managed.
Right.
He's not a 500, manager, so he's got to get there.
Right.
I believe that he is the right guy to be kept with the group, because it would have been terrible to let him walk after he had to absorb two terrible seasons that they forced him to absorb. But he is the right guy, and I agree with Stuart and both of you, that for right now, he's the right guy. Whether he's the right guy at the end of the season or next season, we don't know yet. And then real quick, I had a chance to meet Jack McKeon 2 years ago here in Jacksonville for a noon baseball game with the Turbo Shrimp. Okay. And he walked up to me and he introduced himself, and we started talking. Jack McKeon is one of the most amazing men. He has forgotten more baseball than I will know in my lifetime. And we sat and talked and watched baseball for an hour together, talking about the Marlins and how he thought that it would take 5 years to rebuild this organization. And now he's not part of the organization, and the team is rebuilding. Just a wonderful time. It's a memory that I will keep forever. You should.
You should. Anytime you have an opportunity to meet a great baseball person, you learn from them. No question about it. You should. I'm glad that you had a chance to experience that.
It's wonderful.
No, again, you've been covering the game a long time, David. I know that Stuart's been a fan of the game, and I've covered it for a lot of years as well. So it's good. Yeah. That's why it's always fun how all three of us can share experiences.
He lives in Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh, does he?
And Greenville, North Carolina. I'm sorry. One of their it's no longer one of their single A teams, but he was living up there. And as I'm walking out of the game, he says, "Hey, your girlfriend, you want to come up here?" He gave me his number. He said, "Yeah, I'll come hang out with him." I mean, it really was truly an experience. I will never forget that moment. It was amazing.
Did you ever get a photo with him?
Actually, I do. I do have a photo with him. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think it'd be pretty cool.
I have it on my computer somewhere. I'll find it for you.
Okay.
I'll send it to you.
Oh, that's good. I would sit here and tell you I'd be depressed with if I had a camera phone years ago, how many photos I would have had, but I'm trying to make up for another way. So I'm not going to end
By the way, he had a flip phone. I just want to let you know that, which I thought was hilarious.
If it were up to me, I'd still have a flip phone, but unfortunately, I'd be in trouble without it. So I'm not going to end this broadcast on a depressing note. I wish I had a flip phone and I could tell technology to take a hike, because I'd be in trouble without it. So no, we're having a fun time with the broadcast tonight, keeping everything real. So for all you flip phone fans, I still wish I had you, but we're in trouble without it. With that said, okay, I think we've covered a tremendous amount of ground tonight. David, you go ahead and lead it off. Want everybody to know how they get a hold of you.
Sure.
Stuart follows, and then I'll wrap up the broadcast tonight.
All right, guys. I write for Fansided.com. I cover the Miami Marlins on MarlinManiac.com. I also cover the Jacksonville Jaguars on BlackandTeal.com. I can be found on Twitter at DM719907.
Go ahead, Stu.
And when I'm not clearing out UNS Cespedes' hotel room, you could find me in Wellington at Hack Tax and Accounting Services. I couldn't resist. Phone number 561-214-6171. On the web at hacktaxandaccounting.com.
Yeah. See, David's having a senior moment. He tended to forget that we stuck his grill on top of the South Florida Tribune. So, as a broadcaster, we annoyed him.
I forgot, but see, my mug scares people away.
Well, that's all right. Nobody says it's the Ayatollah Khomeini that we're shooting bullets at their bees.
This is true.
But
I've always said I have a face for radio.
It's up there nonetheless.
Oh my God,
I hear you. Yeah,
I have a face for radio.
Dating back to my 1979, that's another story. But anyways, last but not least, me. Okay. Scott Morgan, Roth, the Motor City Man Mouth. Just so you know, folks, you're listening to 108 Citrus Baseball Talk on the WSAN/South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. Yeah, you can catch these broadcasts on Apple Podcast, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast. If I went ahead and spoke too fast, I'll give it to you a second time. Okay, Apple Podcast, subscribe, you'll get it. Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, or for that matter, wherever you get your podcast. Now, you can also locate us on Twitter at Tribune South, Facebook, South Florida Tribune, Instagram, South Florida Tribune. I have a YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune. And, of course, the website, as we've talked about, www.southfloridatribune.com. You'll find that we have articles from a lot of our media distribution partners, columnists, and, of course, the broadcast can be found there. And then you can email me here at the South Florida Tribune at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And last but not least, I have a LinkedIn. You can be more than happy to contact me, Scott Morganroth, on LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to reach out to you and talk to you anytime. So meanwhile, guys, I enjoyed doing this broadcast with you guys, as we always do every week. And as Tony Kornheiser would say, okay, let's always look to do better the next time, because I think that's the one thing that's good about our industry is we can always think we've done well. Let's continue to improve. And I have great material to work with, so I'm confident we'll be able to keep the continuity going, and I'm really proud of what we accomplished tonight. I'm not going to penalize us for screwing up the name in Japan here about the Japanese guy, because they have errors and omissions on PTI, but at least Stuart Hack was smart enough to figure it out before we went off our air. Before we go off our air, okay, we're at the end of the 6th inning. The Miami Marlins 8, the Baltimore Orioles 6. If I need a geography lesson that the Miami Marlins are not playing at Marlins Park in Camden Yards, well, okay, so be it. We all need geography lessons in 2020. So on behalf of David Levin and Stuart Hack, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thanking you for joining us. All we ask you folks to do out there is please be safe. Take COVID seriously. This is nothing to mess around with. Wear masks, protect yourself at all costs. And more importantly, let's go out there and give a positive shout out to our frontline heroes, the nurses, the doctors, and all the people that have the thankless job out there to make sure that everybody is as healthy as can be. Take this virus seriously. We see what it's not only done to MLB, but our society in general. So once again, guys, outstanding job, and we'll look forward to doing it again. Have a good night, folks.